So from a prioritization perspective, survival goes number one. Right?
Yes.
Survival instinct.
Survival is number one.
So that is
Why?
number of votes.
Because
Public
the
opinion.
world is better when I am in power.
Yes.
Right? That's the driving force behind anyone.
Everyone. Yeah. Right? Probably Kamala believes so.
You may have had more money under Trump. Business might be better. Your life might be better on a day-to-day level. But on this election, democracy is on the line.
Yeah, like fluff talk. That's what Democrats always do. Justice, right? Civil liberties, LGBTQ support, diversity and inclusion. Exclusion is how I call it, DEE. Diversity, equity, and exclusion.
We can have nuanced conversations about all of this, and again, plenty of Muslim.
And we are talking about Kamala Harris, right? I don't know how we got here.
Well, because we're talking about diversity.
Yes.
I think Islam hates us.
They have done nothing except wreak havoc and terror for our faith and our religion.
Professed values of the Western countries, democracy and constitutional and human rights, at least they should speak about this.
And it's like, I feel like religion just is making it worse. They say they believe in God, but I think they're just anxious.
Before we talk about politics, let's look at the fundamental things.
That when we stand up to those who oppress our communities, that Allah accepts from us that as a form of jihad.
And it requires people with guts to follow God in an era that everyone does whatever is right in their eye.
Will you distance yourself from those who think differently? Or will you join us at the table and talk about what is really important? This is the Al-Ma'idah Initiative, conversation without compromise.
Welcome back to this two-part episode about a Christian and a Muslim discuss Donald Trump and Kamala Harris in light of the upcoming election. So last week we talked about Trump, and this week we're going to talk about Kamala Harris. In some ways we barely talked about Trump because, I think we're men of substance, and I think too much of the American political scene is about gossip, right? It's about personalities and, appearances, and I don't think we're really interested in talking about this, but it nevertheless is an important topic, right? Now, the last episode we had together, we did the Bible and the Qur'an, which is a much more important topic than the US election, even though it seems like the center of, reality right now. But last week we were talking about the Abraham Accords and talking about the Treaty of Hudaybiyah and how a lot of Muslims are uncomfortable with these normalized relations with Israel, the UAE, and these Muslim countries. So let me come back at you with that. It seems like if the relationship Israel currently has with the UAE, Israel could have with the Palestinians, would that not be like the best case scenario?
So Israel wants land. From what I understand, the Israeli government or the Zionist agenda. So we need to differentiate between Israeli people versus the Israeli government, right? Two different entities. Don't conflate both. So Israeli people want peace. They just want to live and just live safe, right? Without expecting a missile attack from the other side. That said, the Israeli government wants the Palestinians out, right? So that they can get more land and encroach and just have their own state, however, by whatever means. Nakba 1, Nakba 2, it doesn't matter because the others are Gentiles and we are whoever.
Well, I think there's gradations of that as well. So you have some Israelis who just want peace. Other Israelis on the other side of the spectrum that believe in river to the sea, Nile to the Euphrates, Israel kind of situation where all this land belongs to us. And then I think the other side of that is the security people, which I think represents the core of the current government. I don't think Benjamin Netanyahu is an ideologue.
Ideologue, okay.
Meaning, I don't think he's not a hyper-religious Jew who's concerned about some, manifest destiny of the people.
No.
I think he wants to be rich and safe,
Yes.
right? And I think the majority of Israelis want to be rich and safe, and the territory, and then the alliance between the people who want more land and the security people is based on in this middle ground that having more territory makes them safer,
Yes.
right? Because the whole premise of the Israeli government platform is you need us to be safe
Yes.
because all of our neighbors hate us.
Yes.
Now, if all of our neighbors we vacation in, right? If Israelis are vacationing in Egypt and doing business in Abu Dhabi and, taking, school trips to Morocco, then that security block becomes harder and harder to sell in some ways.
Mhm.
And so it seems to me that what's really needed in the it's somebody who can actually see the legitimate concerns of both sides,
Mhm.
because everybody has legitimate grievances.
Yes.
And if you have a grievance contest to try and determine this, it's not going to get you anywhere.
Mhm.
But you need somebody who's going to look at the legitimate concerns and somebody who can put their hands on both sides and both sides legitimately feel like you're concerned for their well-being.
Mhm.
And that's what's lacking right now. America is not that, because the Palestinians just feel like they're in Israel's corner, which is true.
Mhm.
And what America could be is a country which has both the legitimate interest of the Israelis and the legitimate interest of the Palestinians. If we have a vision, those things are not mutually exclusive,
Mhm.
because they don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Mhm.
But if the goal is elimination of one side or the other, then of course those things are mutually exclusive. And I think, in my opinion, something like the Abraham Accords is moving towards a world where those things are not mutually exclusive, and that's what we need to move towards.
Yes. So the Israeli-Palestinian tension, conflict, whatever you call, there's a lot of history, right? And it's hard to understand that history. But let us say you're in America, you're here, you came from UK. There's a lot of people who came from Europe here, right? You took over the Indian land technically, and you keep Indians safe in whatever territories they are, right? One fine day, the Indians are like, okay, you're encroaching on our land, right? Stop. Like, we don't care. We have the power and we need more space, right? And we are making this economically, whatever. And then the Americans go and take more land. And then you have tension. And the Indians are like, hey, we're not equipped to fight with you. Like, be nice. Then you go and kill them, right? And then they're just trying to like fight back because you're just kicking us out of our ancestral homes and like doing it in a very bad way, killing my mother, killing my dad, and now I'll probably fight back. But then you just keep encroaching more and more land. Now you land in this situation where there is some level of hatred or discomfort in the Indian's mind because you killed me, right? You killed my people. Like, I think it's fairly legitimate to be angry at somebody who kills my mother, right?
Sure.
So now there is a reason for this hatred, right? Like, yes, now the Americans here, your son probably didn't know what that history was and will never be taught about it, right? Shush, shush, we don't talk about what happened 50 years ago. And you are just somebody who just got born in this land, and suddenly you see that there are people who hate us, right? And they send a few arrows and bows towards you, right? And then you send them missiles back, right? And kill more people and take more land. So now, from your son's perspective, it looks like, hey, they threw the arrow first, right? And we are more powerful, so America is right, right? The Indians are wrong. And let's say some other people from India also come, right? From India and Pakistan, because the Indians and Pakistanis have probably the same India name,
Mm-hmm.
and more people immigrate here. Or let's say more Europeans immigrate here, right? And now you have more tension. You're like Indians, like I think we can control America better. We are the most prosperous nation. We have the most smart people. I think you guys should just find another place, like go to Russia, right? Go to Mexico, go somewhere, right? Just leave us alone. Like we can manage this land better. Now at this point, who do you blame?
I think in reality, there's going to be a number of people who share blame.
Yes.
And while you can find an original sin in the situation, that doesn't really excuse anything that happens after that.
Yes.
So, honestly, this is a controversial opinion, but I think the premise of indigenous people is kind of fictional in some sense. In my opinion, if you're born in a country, you belong there.
Fair, it's fine.
Right. So I moved here, right? I'm an immigrant. My children were born here.
Yes.
I consider them indigenous Americans at this point.
Fair.
It's the only country they have ever lived in.
Yes.
Now, to be fair, my kids are also 25% Cherokee.
Okay.
So they literally are indigenous people from a legal standpoint here too.
Yes.
But I think that anybody who is born here belongs here, and I think any kind of equation than that is kind of like nonsensical. Now, if you can trace back a specific crime, then there have to be consequences to that. So,
Yes.
for example, if I stole an American's house, for example, like say this place I just squatted in and took over.
Indian American.
Yeah.
Native American, let's call it.
Again, for me, I'm literally British, so
okay.
I can use a first generation example.
You're a Caucasian. Let's say you're a Caucasian, at least from ethnicity.
Yeah.
Caucasians don't belong to America at least 300 years ago.
Yeah.
So you moved here. You're the immigrant, however you call it, and the native Indians either were born here 500 years ago. I don't know where they trace their ethnicity from. So let's say they were here before you.
Yes.
Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's continue.
So, my children are now born here.
Yes.
Now, if I stole someone's house, then that house should go back to the person I stole it from.
Fair.
And there will be consequences for that for my children. Right now, and that's collateral damage from my sin and crime as their father, and that's unavoidable. But they certainly shouldn't be deported for my crimes if they were born here.
Yes.
And they certainly shouldn't be killed for my crimes.
Yes.
So once, and the further back you go, the more complicated it is to kind of.
But in today's reality.
Yeah.
Today's reality.
To pass it out. So when you talk about Israel and Palestine, the fact is this is a war between people, a conflict between people whose grandparents were all born there.
Yes.
Fundamentally.
Okay.
And if you want peace on any terms, then you have to kind of acknowledge that.
Yes.
That it would be unjust for Israelis to displace Palestinians who have been there for hundreds and thousands of years.
Yes.
But more relevantly, Palestinians whose parents and grandparents were there and bought and owned land there, and then lost those things. So, but conversely, the Israelis, most of them at this point, were born in Israel.
Okay, I'm with you there.
So any realistic solution has to be able to look to point to both of those people, recognize that their entirely valid concerns for their fear for the future and their security,
Yes.
and chart a way forward, which is which is in some way compromised.
Yes.
Because if the solution is, well, everybody fights until somebody dies, I mean, that certainly solves it, but in the worst way possible.
That doesn't solve it. Yeah.
I mean,
Come back.
Right.
Nobody's going to just forget, right? If they're not going to come back, your neighbors are going to come back, right? There is some level of justice, right? Like if you think that you can annihilate millions of people, like off the face of the earth, like put a nuclear bomb in Gaza or something like that, right? You'll get rid of Gazans, but what about all those Palestinians who are spread across the world? What about all those Arabs who are their neighbors? Right? Like there will be consequences, right? Even if you figure out a way to commit genocide, right? You can't do it, right? It's not a numbers game. People don't forget that easily.
Right. And as a Christian, I don't believe that's a possible future either. The way the Bible talks about the region, you see Israelites and Palestinians there until the end.
Yeah. Okay.
And so so trying to just like mass deport everybody or kill everybody is not a good thing to do.
It's not a solution. It's not a solution.
It's not a solution.
So what I'm trying to get to here is like, let's not go back in history, but let's not ignore the history either.
Sure.
Right. But what I'm trying to say in the today, let's say both of them come to the table and say that, hey, fighting enough is enough, right? Let's talk peace. Both people are on the table, right?
Right.
Now for me, let's say as a Palestinian, to take you seriously, I would expect that when you're at the table, you won't kill more of our people, like on a day-to-day basis, or you would not continue to do this apartheid. I'm not like change the status quo. Let you keep your land, we keep our land, and let's start talking from here, right? Or at least many people like 1967, pre-1967 boundaries, right? Let's say 2024 boundaries. Okay, let's say somebody in Palestine is like, okay, enough is enough. Let's get to the table. There is no way we can win this war realistically because United States is backing them. None of our neighbors are going to help us. So we are anyways either going to die or like live a miserable life. I mean, that's the reality. Israelis usually have the upper hand. Israelis have the upper hand, and they're like, hey, we have all of this prosperity. We have the US backing us. We can do whatever we want, right? So definitely the upper hand, right?
Sure.
So they don't need to compromise.
No,
right?
they don't.
But from a human standpoint, we are brothers, right? All of them came from Adam, right? Even if they don't necessarily agree with whatever, being an equal, like technically both of them are human beings. So let's say two human beings come to the table to negotiate an agreement to have a good human life for each other. Is a very noble cause, right? And this cause has happened before. Where I'm getting to is, you can sit at the table with a straight face, right, without being hypocritical, as long as you don't encroach more land and don't kill more people.
Sure.
Right. So that has to be there. Let's say you go there, right? How, like, I think we are talking about solutions, right? At this point, you need to figure out a way where Israelis stop encroaching more land in the name of destiny.
Yes.
Right. And Palestinians stop sending missiles to their neighbors.
Right.
Right. So both ways it's important. Stop keeping hostages at bay. And like, I'm anti-Hamas. Okay. What I mean by that is, like, I think Hamas, it is in the best interest of Israeli government for Hamas to exist. It is in the best interest of Netanyahu for Hamas to keep the hostages. Because if today Hamas says, here are the 100 hostages,
and
the war ends.
Yeah, and it's in the best interest of Hamas for Israeli settlers to keep attacking people in the West Bank. Yeah,
because they have a reason for existence. They have a reason for armed struggle, right? Because like, it's in their best interest. So like, if I was Netanyahu, I'd be funding Hamas, and he did fund Hamas, right? I mean, it's just the money trail can show you, right? So like, and it is in his best interest to discredit the Palestinian Authority, right? It is in his best interest to keep them separated, right? I mean, if you are a good strategist, this is what I would do if I didn't care about people's lives.
Sure. Again, if you're a mid-range strategist, right? I think if you're a good strategist, what you'd be able to see is if you had what I think Israel should do is it needs to have a positive vision for the future. Because again, you said they have all the power here. They've got no reason to compromise.
Yes.
What they should be thinking about, and what they should say is, look, we want the war to end, and we want to turn Gaza into Dubai on the Mediterranean.
Okay.
And if Gaza was rich, prosperous, and safe, and like the UAE, then you could have free travel between them, and that benefits everybody.
Yes.
Israel would be richer from that too.
And the people would feel safe. Like, imagine the life of an Israeli person. That's why I'm trying to tell you, Israeli government is completely disconnected from the interests of the Israeli people. Much like the American politicians are fairly disconnected from the interests of the American people.
Well, I wouldn't say completely disconnected, because the average Israeli citizen certainly has a interest in security.
Yes, no, I'm not saying completely, right? What I mean is the Israeli government really doesn't need to work in the best interest of the Israeli people. Doesn't need to, as long as they have their money pile coming in, right? Like, it's like a politician doesn't need to work for his people as long as he gets his votes. Like, this is what happens in politics.
Well,
right? I mean,
and actually, I think this is part of the problem of democracies. Actually,
yeah, that's why Islam doesn't support democracy, right? Like this numbers game where the fringe and the people, the sheep will follow the fringe. Now, depends which fringe is louder. You can always influence public opinion at large and swing the election to any direction you want. That's why Islam is not supportive of. That's why many Muslims also don't vote in a democratic system. Like in India, in America, we don't support democracy, and I think like America thinks that that's the best answer to. Like, I mean, I think it's a pragmatic answer. It's probably one of the solutions that we have to manage the decisions in a country, right? But it's very skewed depending on who controls the media.
well, I think the problem with democracies, especially in a situation like this, is it trends towards a short attention span.
Correct.
And to really, if you wanted to, fix the whole Israel-Palestine situation, you would need basically 100-year vision.
Yes, yes.
And the problem is, people like Hamas and people like Israeli settlers have a longer vision than democratic politicians.
Correct.
So the people who think of themselves on the side of peace and practicality, well, practicality is always it tends to react quicker.
Yes.
To
what happens this year?
What happens this year
makes
right?
more sense than a 100-year vision. So I would say, let's focus on the now, right? Like that's what matters, right? Kitchen table economics, like far excels civil liberty and justice and all of that philosophical stuff, right? Tell me if, like you said, like tell me how much I'm getting paid and what's the quality of my life 5 years from now, 5 years before, and how are you going to change it next month or this year?
So on that note, right, we're talking about Kamala Harris here, and part of her pitch is
let's go back to the original title of the talk.
Going back to the premise.
Yes.
The Democratic pitch right now is, yeah, things may have been, you may have had more money under Trump. Business might be better. Your life might be better on a day-to-day level. But on this election, democracy is on the line.
Yeah, like fluff talk. That's what Democrats always do. Talk fluff. And I'm not saying all Democrats are the same. I'm saying the vast majority of Democrats, or like, I mean, who do you decide, right? You have to talk about somebody, right? Buck needs to stop somewhere. That's so it stops with Joe Biden. It stops with Kamala Harris, his vice president, and probably stops with that lady who I keep forgetting her
Nancy
name.
Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi, right? These are representatives. They are the representative of their party, right? So now you can't talk about this entity, right? You have to talk about people if you're going to judge something. So let's assume that they represent their Democratic Party, and we have to stick to something, right? And Trump, Mitch McConnell, and I don't know, like that guy in Florida, I forget his
Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, Ron DeSantis. So these three people represent the GOP. Like we'll have to kind of come to some common term, right? Now we are going to judge these two parties based on these three individuals, right? And they're not the same. They have their own differing views. So I think in the process I forgot what your question was. Subhanallah.
So well, we're just trying to get into the democratic pitch this election.
Yes, it's democracy,
which is democracy itself.
Justice, civil liberties, LGBTQ support, diversity and inclusion. Exclusion is how I call it, DEE. Diversity, equity, and exclusion is how I call DEE. Right?
Yeah.
So let's stand for DEE. Let's stand for democracy, because we don't want a dictator here, and everything else. Just let's not talk numbers, right? Because numbers are objective, and thoughts and promises are all subjective. So let's live in the life of subjectivity, so I can give you a reason to be happy about, even if it doesn't change your kitchen table economics.
So let's do something a little different here, because I think I was expecting us to disagree more on politics than we do, I think. So I am the opposite of left-wing in a lot of ways. I wouldn't say my views directly align with the Republican platform.
Yeah.
But in general, I would prefer less government, less taxation, the decentralization of power, right? Those are things I generally believe in. And there's very little on the left-wing platform that I'm like, oh yay, I love this.
Yeah.
However, let's do our best here to build a steel man, like the best possible case of what we think the virtues of the left are.
Yes.
In the US, right? So what do you think the left? What do you think are some good nuggets that the left is striving for in the country?
Yeah, I appreciate kind of taking a look at the pros and cons, right? Like I think inherently being a human being, I have my biases and I've already come to certain conclusions. But that said, that doesn't mean that people who are in power are like maniacs or lunatics, or they have no clue what they're doing, right? They have some good things that they've done, right? In terms of, let's say, Kamala Harris, right? She was the Attorney General, state of California, and US Senator as well, right? So it's not like she's a nobody, right? She's a somebody. She worked for civil justice and liberty kind of causes, right? She did some good for some incarcerated people. So I like the Democratic Party is a big topic, right? But I think when we look at people, at least you have a very clear trail of what they've done, right? So do you want me to talk about Democratic Party as this overarching entity, or really talk about the people involved?
Well, let's talk about some of the good. So for example, right, I want to talk about some of the things that are noble about the ideology, even if the implementation is not good. So, for example, diversity and inclusion is a big part of the democratic worldview and platform.
Yes.
Right now. And I do not think diversity is automatically a good thing, but I do believe diversity is a good thing.
Yes. So anything extreme is bad, right? Being extremely religious is bad. Being extremely atheist is bad, right? You want to be somewhere in the middle, right? Don't be extremely conservative. Don't be extremely moderate, extremely libertarian. I don't know. Whatever the other side is. So I think diversity is good. Yes, the more diverse perspective that you have sitting at the table, you get a better worldview that benefits everybody. And not everybody is starting their life at the same point, right? There's diversity in terms of economic circumstances, like there's rich people and there's poor people. Their needs are different, their wants are different. There is people from the Asian background, there's people from the white European, Caucasian background. There's people from the Arab background. Each of them have their own perspectives, and they may not agree on everything, But sometimes you have to give and take, right? And that is important. So I think Democrats understand this concept better than the Republicans, right? So I'm for the diversity principle, right? I am for creating equitable circumstances. I am for including people from other countries where things are difficult, right? In a moderate line, right? Immigration is not bad, it's very good, right? For the country, for everybody, it's good. But then if you take it too far, it becomes a liability.
And I think one issue with this is I think the left-wing worldview tends to view people as complete blank slates. And it basically, and what I mean by that is it takes individual agency and accountability for people's decisions a lot of the time. So if you see the world as a oppressor victim hierarchy all the time, then the reason you're not doing well is because there is just some systemic problem somewhere that means that you are not thriving. And if that's what it is, and you don't have a holistic view of human nature, then what you do is you take the oppressed person out of the corrupt system and put them in a good system, and suddenly they will thrive.
Yes.
Which sometimes is true. So this is why a lot of immigrants succeed so well. So if you take a Carolite, for example, who is used to being in a very corrupt system, and
it's not that corrupt.
Yeah, but okay,
better.
But, yeah,
it's worse. Like,
or even let's take somebody from say Afghanistan.
Yeah,
where you've had a kind of corrupt system, but they have
subjective.
But okay, where they had a corrupt system, right?
I mean, where are you getting your knowledge from, right? You're just getting it from the news. Like, you're talking to a very specific Afghan audience who are also seen as traitors to their country. So,
whoa. So, but even the average Talib would say the system before them was corrupt, right?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, you need to. I mean, I have Afghan friends who moved here maybe 50 years ago, 20 years, 30 years. I have an Afghan friend who I meet every day, right? The guy was born here, I think, or moved here 5 years at 5 years of age, right? So they love their country. They love their the people who are in control. They're happy with the Taliban. They say all good things about Taliban, right? You need to talk to those people as well, right? Because they're the vast majority of Afghanistan, like from what I understand, right? If you talk to, yes, and I also have friends who moved here on US visas, part of the US administration in Afghanistan, and they paint a very different picture. They're like ESL classes, we want to get into this thing. I left all my money there. I was oppressed and I was scared for my life and I moved here. So like you really like, and it's not a game of numbers, but you need to acknowledge that there is a perspective.
Sure, but I would say
exists.
I would say even the people who don't like the Taliban would say the government of Afghanistan before the Taliban was hopelessly corrupt. And if you talk to, so I met a Pashtun guy.
Hopelessly corrupt is a very subjective term.
Sure. But it was corrupt.
I mean, you think America is not corrupt?
No, I think America is corrupt. But
okay, thank you for that acknowledgement.
For sure. But as far as
power corrupts, like obviously.
Yeah.
Was it better with the US? For sure, no. You just lost your. Somebody would come into your village and shoot people and go away. Like, is that better than a corrupt government? For sure. Like, this is Congress, BJP kind of talk. So talk about India.
So if you. So I met a.
Would you rather like being lynched?
No.
Or an honest government, or a corrupt government? I'd pick corrupt government.
Yeah.
Any day.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think a corrupt government is better than anarchy.
Yes.
Now, what I'm saying here is let's take the guy I met at Maple Leaf Park near here the other day. A Pashtun guy likes the Taliban.
Okay.
And
I'm not like FBI, CIA who's watching this. I'm not like a Taliban supporter, but
he's already condemned Hamas. Give him a break, right?
Yes. FYI.
You're gonna the people you take somebody from a corrupt system into a less corrupt system. Often those people thrive.
Yes. Any person.
So in general,
If you're a hardworking person.
Yeah, if you
are corrupt, you won't try.
Yeah. If you're a hardworking person who's had to deal with a corrupt system, and you suddenly put into a system that rewards your work more than the system you came from,
Yes.
you'll generally thrive.
Yes.
So in America, most Indians and Pakistanis I know, for example, are probably, the first year is harder, but they're generally doing better than the average.
Oh, it's statistics. Yeah, the Indian Americans are far more richer, like just dollar rich, compared to any other community in the United States. Even Asians, meaning like the Chinese Asians, Southeast Asians, Indians do far better.
So with that in mind, the U.S. population has things to learn from Indians and Chinese and immigrants who are here.
Yes.
But there's also things that what left-wing culture tends not to have is kind of a gate. Like, not all cultures are successful. There's some immigrant cultures which are not as successful as that, because there are things within the culture that don't price things like hard work and personal responsibility to the same level.
To the same level, it's very nuanced, right? It really depends on circumstances as well. What I mean by that is, I mean, I don't know if I interrupted your train of thought. I'm sorry.
No, keep going.
So how I see this is, in an age where technology is thriving, right? Indians have an unfair advantage over other countries that have not invested in technology or engineering or science, right? That doesn't mean that person or person from that culture is less capable than the other. It just happens so that software engineering is a very scalable skill. So you can make more money there, right? Just because you have more money doesn't mean you're better than somebody.
Sure. What I'm saying though is, let's say if you look at England and America,
yes,
Pakistani immigrants here, for example, are doing better than Pakistani immigrants in England in general.
By better, you mean economically better?
Economically better.
Okay.
So in general, the immigration system America has had incentivizes entrepreneurial-minded people.
Yes.
So if you take two people from Pakistan and put them in a different country, those two people are not going to be the same. And so some people are going to be, driven people who are working hard. And there's other people who are going to be like, inshallah, Allah will provide.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep playing video games. Right. And so if you import 50,000 inshallah play video games people versus I
call it handout people,
right? Versus you import 50,000 driven entrepreneurial hardworking people.
Yes.
You have different results.
I agree.
And so it's not a race thing. It's not an ethnicity thing that happens. But the way people are raised, the mindset people have,
yes,
is very different. And
yes,
I'd say the Democrats are laudable for their desire to include people.
Correct.
But they're often unwilling to look at the dysfunctionality in some cultures in a way that is actually a barrier to them succeeding.
Yes.
Because there are systematic problems
in certain cultures. Yes.
Right. And so for example, right, the infinite Indian green card line in America is a systematic problem.
Yes.
That is putting Indian immigrants at a disadvantage to other people.
Yes.
Right. So that is a systematic thing that needs to be fixed. And so those systematic problems do exist.
Yes.
But so Republicans tend to not see those, and Democrats tend to see those, but Republicans tend to see cultural issues that need to be worked on.
Yes.
And so I think it's actually really useful to learn from people who are different than you.
Yes, لتعارفوا.
Explain that. I don't.
Oh, so Allah says in the Quran in Surah Al-Hujurat, He says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا no إنا خلقناكم من ذكر أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا, right? That indeed we have created you from man and women like Adam and Hawa, Adam and Eve, right? وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل, like we made you towns and cities and tribes لتعارفوا, so that you can learn from each other, so that you can get to know each other, so that you can comprehend each other, right? إن أكرمكم عند الله يتقاكم. The best of you, the most perfect of you, right, are the ones who are mindful of God, who have taqwa. Okay, and Wallahu khabir, and Allah is all knowing, Allah is aware of this. So basically the Quran agrees that we need to learn from each other, from culture. So I learn a lot of things from my one friend who's from Botswana, right? He gives me the South African narrative, right? I have a friend who is from Somalia, and I learn from that. And I have Indian friends, I have Afghani friends, and I love to be in a place which is cosmopolitan, right? I was born and raised in Dubai, and that's why Dubai thrives, right? That's why Saudi doesn't thrive, because it's very Arab, right? They don't welcome immigrants, right? Or if they do have immigrants, they are like a secondary slave class, right? And that's why that country will not prosper as long as that stays. That injustice stays. The longer the injustice stays, that country. So in the concept of Islam, there is a concept that a people will thrive as long as they have justice in that place, right? And injustice will never lead to any good, will not lead to long-term prosperity. So predominantly, America has been a place of justice, right? People have more or less equal rights. Like if you crash me on the road, there's a very good chance that I can get something back.
Right.
Like usually, right? Yes, there's the exception of the black community have been oppressed and incarcerated and all of that. That's an exceptional case. But predominantly, if you as a UK white Caucasian hit an Indian from an Indian ethnicity, you will have consequences.
Yeah.
Do that in Saudi Arabia, right? That Saudi guy who hits an Indian guy will just talk Arabic with the policeman, and then somehow I am responsible for the crash, right? This is like just everyday thing, right? Saudi, and I'm not kind of saying Saudi as this, but this is just my my understanding of the system.
Well, I think for the Saudi listeners and one guy who watches a lot of our videos, I think it's important to acknowledge, right?
Yeah.
This is a historic problem. There are people in Saudi who are trying to fix this.
Yes, there are good people in Saudi.
Right.
But the system is broken.
And I think in some ways it's getting better.
Yes, alhamdulillah,
right.
yes.
It is.
The more they invite more people, more perspective, more people who remove their hijab and things like that. Like you don't need to enforce things, right? That's the Wahhabi Salafi ideology, and now clearly I'm not Salafi, and you can be anti me, but what I'm trying to say is there was a Wahhabi Salafi ideology that pushed this narrative that Islam is like this.
So I think
Islam is not like that.
So I actually think I really appreciate the way the United Arab Emirates does deal with foreign populations.
Yes.
In that, and this is actually a problem that this is something that we could learn. America could learn from them. Is they have very clear terms of what they want from their immigrants.
Yes.
There.
92% in Dubai.
Yeah,
it's immigrant.
So it's got low crime, it's got high expectations, right?
Security.
You know what the deal is, right? If you're going as a tourist, you know what the culture is and what they do and don't tolerate there, and that's clear. On the downside, you're kind of always a renter to some extent.
Yes,
But
they don't give you a passport.
yeah, but at least they're honest about that, right? You know what the deal is.
Yes.
So if you're going to the UAE, I know I can make money here. I can have a limited extent of freedom here, and there's some things I can do. There's some things I can't do.
Yeah.
Right. Like I couldn't go hand out tracts in the streets of Dubai and say everybody convert from Islam to Christianity. But what I could do is I could have a conversation like this there.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And not that I do the other one anyway, but but you know what the deal is.
Yes.
And I think America needs to do a better job of communicating. Here's what the deal is for living here.
Yes. Yes.
And this is a problem that's happening with this current wave of immigration. That so my experiences with Afghans, and in this current wave, because you've mass import a lot of people, you have a lot of people who don't really know what the deal is. So I find there's still a lot of forced marriages going on in the Afghan culture in the sort of South Seattle area.
Forced marriages.
Yes.
What does that mean? I don't know.
Meaning that a daughter is being... I was involved in a case where a 16-year-old daughter was being forced to marry her cousin against her will.
Why?
Because that's what her parents wanted for her, and they wanted to marry her somewhere in the family and protect her from the American teenage experience.
Okay. Okay.
And then I met another woman who was forced by her husband to, cover up fully and wear never leave the house without a male escort.
Okay.
Right. And again, there's lots of Afghans that are not like this.
Yeah.
But what was not communicated to those people when they came here was, if you want to live here and a woman wants to never leave the house and cover up fully and practice the sort of Salafi way of Islam, she is more than welcome to do that here.
Yes.
But if you're trying to control someone to do that,
yes,
that's a crime here.
Even in Islam, la ikraha fi din. There is no compulsion in religion. It's a verse right after the greatest verse in the Quran, which is Ayatul Kursi. The next verse is La ikraha fi din. There is no compulsion in religion. قد تبين الرشد من الغي. Goodness is clearly separated from غي. I don't know how to translate that. From bad, let's say. The good is clearly differentiated from the bad. قد تبين الرشد من الغي ومن يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم. And whoever rejects the taghut, idol worship, money worship, whatever you call it, right? Taghut, and believes in Allah, then he has held on to a rope that is strong, right? That will not break. Wallahu sami'un alim, and Allah is all hearing and all knowing. So no compulsion in religion. You cannot compel somebody if you decide. And I understand there is apostasy and all of that kind of thing. That's a very complex concept.
Sure, and again, all of this, we can have nuanced conversations about all of this, and again, plenty of Muslim.
And we are talking about Kamala Harris, right? I don't know how we got here.
Well, because we're talking about diversity.
Yes, diversity as it's the Indian style of doing it.
So so the point is, this is the thing the America needs to be clearer on.
Yes.
Right. That it's like, yes, diversity, and then here are the lines.
Yeah. Boundaries.
The boundaries. And I think generally the Democrats are not as good at drawing boundaries as the Republicans are, right? But and then on the
it doesn't serve anything for them,
right?
They just need more asylum seekers here so they can vote for them. I mean, it's a numbers game. Like, tell me one incentive. Why? Other than being a good human being and
sure,
responsible.
And the thing is, I think that both those things go together in people's minds.
Which is,
I don't think there's any Democratic officials being like, ha ha ha, if I'll stay in power forever if I have these 20,000 people, 10,000 people a day. I genuinely think it's usually the way people sell themselves on bad ideas is is they permit it with good. So in people's minds,
Yeah, everyone
it's-
thinks they're
it's-
doing something noble.
right, exactly. So it's a win-win in people's minds.
Even Hitler
Or-
thought he was a noble guy.
Yeah. So if somebody is pro, mass immigration without check and balance, then what's happening there, which by the way is not the current Democratic platform, because they realize this is unpopular.
Yeah, it doesn't help their. So you need to understand, as a Democrat, as a political party, your number one. There's prioritization, right? And they're smart people, right? They're not stupid. So from a prioritization perspective, survival goes number one. Right?
Yes,
Survival instinct.
Survival is number one.
So that is
Why?
number of votes.
Because
Public
the
opinion.
world is better when I am in power.
Yes.
Right? That's the driving force behind anyone.
Everyone. Yeah.
Right?
Probably Kamala believes so.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
It's this human impulse that is like, the world is better if I am God. All of us have that little voice inside of us being like, you should be, what if you're God? You should have power here. And that's something we have to try really, really, really hard to like resist.
Yes.
So it's not that everyone thinks they're doing something noble here, and and so even the desire to stay in power.
Yes, everybody has positive intent.
Right.
I am not questioning their intent.
Right.
Right. But just because you have a good intent doesn't mean it's good.
Right.
I could bash you and say that it's good for you, James.
There's a saying which I love. I can't remember who said it. It says the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yes, exactly. That there's a hadith also to that regard.
So that's the central weakness in my mind of the good, right? But it's the way I believe evil works in the world generally is that Satan is not a creator. He's a manipulator.
Correct.
And so all of the worst things in the world are a twisting of something that was once good.
Yes.
So the desire to help immigrants is a good thing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
The desire to seeing lots of people fleeing from their homes or poverty and being like, we should take care of those people.
Good packaging.
That's a good good packaging, and it's a good impulse.
Yes, it's good.
But you have to understand how the world actually works and how people actually get help.
Yes.
And it's not quite as simple as, okay, we just put money in the right place, then everything gets fixed. It doesn't.
No.
The world has complex problems that it needs people to be thoughtfully engaged in.
Thoughtful, yes. That's a very good way to put it.
So let's land with, what are the most important things you think that a Muslim should be doing going up to the election? Then I'll talk about what I think the most important things Christians should be doing.
So one size doesn't fit all. If you are a Muslim who cares about immigration and cares about your family coming here to this country, and you happen to be in those 7 countries that were blockaded by Trump, right? Maybe Kamala is the option for you, right? Kamala is the option for you. And if you think if you want handouts, right, like from the government, then Kamala is the option for you, right? If you are looking for more diversity hires and probably helps you with your job prospects, Kamala is the person for you, right? If you believe like you're LGBTQ supporter, right, and you're Muslim, kind of complicated, then Kamala is the person for you, right? You're gay and you're Muslim, like, go vote Kamala. If you are somebody who believes in family values, don't want your children to change your gender, don't want all that crap in my opinion, personal opinion, taught in schools to 5-year-olds, vote Trump. If you are somebody who wants to have a fair chance at work, right? If you work, male or female, you do a good job, black or white, vote for Trump. The stock market is going to do better, right? If you want to make money, he's going to cut taxes. Companies will have more profit. So anyway, so If you try to make money on the stock market, vote for Trump. If you, I think, yeah, if I mean, in my opinion, if you are aligned with the teachings of Islam and you're okay to live with the myself and I arrogant kind of tone and keep watching Twitter or something like that, X as it's called, or Truth Social. Like if you're okay to mind that kind of noise and a little bit of a Muslim ban, a little bit of Abraham Accords and things like that, if you are willing to live with that in the greater good of a more prosperous, value-oriented, equitable America, vote for Trump. And the choice is yours. Like nobody's going to compel you. You're not a bad Muslim. I guess you need to choose between two evils. It's easy to choose between good and bad, and there's no good and bad in this situation, right? You have two evils. Like most politicians are corrupt. So it's a hard problem to choose between two goods and two evils. So choose the lesser evil is what I'm trying to tell you. Now, it really depends what you're looking for.
I think for Christians is easier in some ways because the sort of Islamic history starts with the Rashidun, right?
Rashidun.
The rightly guided Caliph.
Khulafa Rashidun, yeah.
Right.
The Prophet Sallallahu. It starts with Prophet.
The Prophet is in government.
Yes.
So you've got the Charter of Medina. And so I think Muslims generally have kind of a higher expectation for governments, whereas for Christians, Jesus was killed by the government.
Yeah, the government worked again. He drove Prophet Muhammad out of.
Sure. So no, I'm not saying that Muslims don't have an idea that there can be a corrupt government.
Yes.
But I'd say the standard starts lower for us in some ways.
Okay.
And so Jesus says when he's on trial, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants pick up weapons and be fighting, that it wouldn't be handed over to you. My kingdom is not of this world. And so it doesn't mean we shouldn't participate in earthly governments, because Romans 13, written by Paul, says God himself has placed governments there for the good of
it's to benefit people.
And ultimately we have this understanding that God himself is sovereign over history. So whoever wins the election in November, it's ultimately God who is deciding the result for his own purposes.
Now, can you repeat that? Sorry?
Whoever wins the election in November is God himself that decides the result of that election.
Correct. It's with his permission.
Now, that doesn't mean we should just be complacent about it.
Yeah, we have to work towards the cause.
But I think there's one comfort you can take in that. And I think a big problem in America right now, people just kind of become all consumed with these types of problems when I think it's completely viable for a Christian to vote for Donald Trump, but please don't think of him as a messianic figure, because this is 4 years. This decides the next 4 to 8 years of our country. It's not unimportant, but it's not the thing that's going to make a difference forever. And there are kinds of things you can do that do have the ability to make a sort of forever difference. And what I mean by that is, or at least a long-term difference. So what I mean by that is politics is downstream from culture. And I think every Christian, as they're looking at the political sphere, they may see things that they're concerned about. So, for example, there's somebody who believes in limited government and, celebrating, our culture and history, and, is somebody who would be, on the sort of like right-wing libertarian spectrum. I certainly am concerned about the left, but I'm also concerned about things I'm seeing in the right right now.
So they also have evil.
But but the best thing I can do is embody the things I want to see in the world, in my own life.
Yes.
So how do I navigate diversity? How do I take care of the poor? How do I bring other people with me on that journey. And while you as an individual are making a sort of small difference in a much bigger pond, the cultural transformation that can come from that can have amazing impacts downstream. So the whole Israel-Gaza thing, for example, yes, it's a political problem. Yes, it's a war problem. Yes, there's a humanitarian problem right now. But all of what's happening now is downstream from things that happened in culture, 100, 50, 30, 20, 10 years ago. And politicians are never going to have, in a democracy, never going to have ultimate long-term vision. And so unless we as a culture have that kind of long-term vision for the world we want to see. And that's implemented through the sort of small things that you do in your life.
Yes. Like be honest. Yeah, be nice. Like stand for justice.
Say what you think is true.
Say what is honest, yeah. Yeah, but don't be a hypocrite, yeah, please. Like don't be a munafiq. Like in a religion, it's like I don't know, it's a long talk, but innal munafiqina fi ad-darki al-asfali min an-nar. The hypocrites are the ones who will be in the lowest depths of hellfire. Like they're the worst of the worst. So at least do what you say and say what you do.
So I think right now, everybody looking at this election, almost everybody looking at this election, is choosing between two less than ideal candidates.
Yes, two evils.
And the solution to that is downstream from cultural transformation. If we're going to have a good candidate at some point in the future, then we need to do the groundwork now.
Yes.
That's going to ensure that future.
Yes.
Well, the video is about to run out.
Okay. Yes.
So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for listening to the Al Maida Initiative podcast.